In the final century of the Republic, Rome was no longer a city of farmers who returned to their plows after war. It had become an empire, in fact, though not yet in name. The old families still spoke of virtue and precedent, but the words had grown thin. The machinery of law remained, but it turned now under the weight of ambition, more than principle. The Senate still convened. The consuls still took their oaths. Yet something beneath the surface had shifted. Power no longer rested in institutions alone. It followed men who commanded legions, men who returned from distant provinces with gold and loyalty that could not be legislated. The Republic had grown too large to be governed by those who feared to act beyond their station. Into this world came a man of patrician blood but uncertain fortune. He was not the richest, he was not the most beloved, but he possessed a quality that others lacked. He did not stop when caution suggested he should. He saw the limits others observed, and he studied them not as walls, but as suggestions. Where law and custom formed a boundary, he found the space between interpretation and defiance. He rose through offices, through alliances, through debts both political and financial. He took governorships in distant lands and returned with conquests that expanded Roman authority into forests and shores the Senate had barely named. And with every success, the question grew quieter, but more urgent. What happens when one man's will becomes greater than the structure meant to contain him? Ambition in itself is not corruption. It is the force that builds roads, raises temples, extends the boundaries of what a people believe possible. But ambition without limit does not recognize the ground beneath it. It does not ask whether the structure can bear the weight. It asks only whether the next step is possible. He did not seek to destroy Rome. He sought to save it from inefficiency, from the paralysis of divided counsel, from enemies both within and beyond its borders. He believed, perhaps truly, that he alone could see what needed to be done, and so he acted. When the Senate sought to recall him, to strip him of his command, and leave him vulnerable to his rivals, he did not submit. He did not plead. He crossed a small river that marked the boundary no general was permitted to cross with an army. The river was shallow. The act was not. In crossing, he did not merely defy a law. He severed the principle that law, however inconvenient, stood above individual will. He chose necessity over legitimacy. He chose speed over consensus. The choice was rational. It was strategic. It may even have been inevitable. But it was the kind of choice that, once made, cannot be unmade. Men followed him, not because they believed in tyranny, but because they believed in him. And that was the transformation. Loyalty transferred from the Republic to the person. He won the war that followed. He pardoned his enemies with a magnanimity that astounded even those who hated him. He reformed the calendar, settled veterans, codified laws, extended citizenship. The machinery of governance moved faster under his hand than it had in generations. But the cost was invisible at first. The Senate still met. The rituals continued. Only the substance had been hollowed out. Forms remained. Authority had moved elsewhere. He was murdered in the Senate chamber by men who believed they were restoring the Republic. They were not defending tradition against ambition. They were enacting the final proof that the Republic was already gone. The institutions he had bent did not return to their former shape. They could not. What followed was not restoration, but fragmentation, civil war. The rise of others who had learned his lesson, that authority belongs to those willing to seize it. His heir, a sickly youth of 18, would become the first emperor, cloaked in the language of republicanism, but governing with the power of a king. The Republic died not when he crossed the river, but in the years of compromise that made the crossing thinkable. He became a name, then a title, then a symbol carved into stone across an empire. And yet the stone does not remember the moment when necessity replaced law, when one man's certainty replaced the slow deliberation of many. It remembers only the legend. When men place their faith in the will of one, rather than the restraint of all, they do not gain a savior. They lose the ability to be saved by themselves. The boundary, once erased, does not reappear because it is missed.